what you want to do is think that everything is content. If you are listening to this live podcast, this is content. Go write about it and say, oh, I did this today, kind of thing. You go and have dinner later and you spill coffee on the floor or whatever, go write about it. That's a post, and it's all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't have to be work related. It doesn't say, oh, I dropped coffee and it taught me that actually I should go get a marketing degree or whatever. It doesn't make any sense, right? So sometimes you just want to tell stories because they are stories. And what it is, it gives people an insight into your lives.
Hey, marketing rebels. Hello, it's Fab here, your marketing BFF and head teacher at Alt Marketing School, a modern school teaching you how to market to hearts. And together, each week, we share the freshest news, articles, insights that you simply can't miss. And today, we're bringing you insights from a wonderful human. I'm joined by the one and only Gus to talk about LinkedIn. Hello, Gus. How are we doodling?
Hi, Fab. I'm all the better for seeing you. I'm really glad that I'm here. Thank you so much.
I have a question for you because I was thinking about colors today. I know everybody,
Mhm.
I promise we'll talk about LinkedIn, but I was thinking about colors and our color has slowly become yellow. So if you see yellow, I wanted to slowly start thinking about this school. I got my yellow blazer. I got my yellow leather jacket, which she's super cool. I was so chuffed when I found that. I see orange. And when I see orange, I think of Gus. Can I ask you why is that? How did orange become so much part of your brand?
You know, it, that's a great question. It's a very long story, but I'll keep it short. So basically, many years ago, when had a proper marketing job, what I would do is I would teach people all about marketing, etc. And I used to use Terry's chocolate oranges, and I used to teach people about segmentation, so different parts of the market, etc. Then, when I started my business, I spoke to a branding specialist, and originally we were supposed to choose purple and silver. And when I saw my logo in purple and silver, I was like, that looks horrible. That was awful. So then he said, well, what are your favorite colors? And I said, oh, well, I love black and I love orange and, etc. So we went with that. As soon as I saw my logo, I was like, that's the one it's got to be. And obviously being a marketer, over the years, you learn about the fact that you have to stand out. There's something that differentiates you as opposed to kind of like, sorry, in addition to what you do, there's also like other things. And like yourself, like you said, the yellow blazer and the yellow leather jacket, or those shoes with the yellow lightning strike behind you, all that kind of stuff. It really, when we start thinking of things like that, and it's these bright, vibrant kind of colors rather than the blues or the greens and the reds, kind of thing. So yeah, I love it. So orange is because of chocolate, basically. That's the short answer.
That is the best reason ever. First of all, Terry chocolate orange, big lover myself. But I love how you kind of go back to what I was thinking about today again, which was the power of association. And it's interesting that, as you said, it's kind of in marketing as well. Like just we wanted to feel right to us too. But also what I found is that, for example, I will find it a lot in like a bigger brand perspective. But also one of the places where I've seen it stand out more when it comes to the association of the colors, like thank goodness for hearts of different colors, because you send me your orange, I send you my yellow is a nice little trade-off. But I think LinkedIn has been one of the first places where I started to see this little elements of unique branding starting to pop out a bit more, and people like reiterating whether it's their emojis, whether it's their colors. I've really seen, and I want to hear your opinion on that before I start with the most important and the first question on the pod. I want to hear your opinion about this, about like LinkedIn, really how we started already thinking about the personal brand side of things in a way that maybe other platforms didn't until more recently. Have you seen that as well? Like people honing that and trying to figure out what that looks like for them?
Yeah, it's almost by design and by default. Like LinkedIn chose to like turn down brands. The company pages are really difficult to get traction on. So you can have a company page so you can be the old marketing school on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, etc. But on LinkedIn, you have to be fab, kind of thing, as in name and nature, obviously. So that's where we come in. Yeah, and it's the personal brand so LinkedIn by default have pushed that. So what's happened is particularly the pandemic has exacerbated that. So obviously they were trying to build up brands, people are trying to build up their companies, etc. And then we realized in the pandemic that actually we want to see the face of the brand. So then we started talking to each other and being personable with each other and telling each other stories, etc. And that's where I think LinkedIn it's the primary place to build a personal brand, in my opinion.
in your unbiased opinion, I should say. But that's why we're here today, everybody. Actually, I have a question on a follow-up on the back of that. And if you're here live with us, and I know you're going to have questions at the end of the weekend that you can ask as well, you can let us know as well in the chat. Every so often I will see if there's anything that pops up. But I want to ask you guys and then see if anybody else has their thoughts as well. What are some of the main blocks, obstacles, sabotages, we choose the name we want, that people might find and that you have heard from, your events and talking to people when it comes to actually starting to show up as the people, as their personal brands on LinkedIn?
Two blocks that I see is the first one is that most people don't know that LinkedIn has changed. Like, they haven't come to LinkedIn for so long and they still see it how it used to be, as in a place where you put CVs and try to find jobs, etc. Once you found a job, you don't need to use LinkedIn again. So I think that's one of the biggest blocker. The other blocker is because some people have been on LinkedIn for years. They have curated an audience over years of people that they work with or their family and their friends, etc. And then they get to a point where they say, I don't want to post because I'm scared of what those people will think. And I think that's probably the biggest blocker, and it's the easiest one to get rid of, because you just say, well, just get rid of those people. We'll block them, we'll disconnect from them, etc. But also, my answer to that is, if you think about who's going to pay your bills. Think about who's going to pay you. And if those people that you used to work for and used to be connected to, and your next door neighbors, brothers, dogs, sister, if they're not going to ever give you money, their opinion does not count. It's as simple as that. We have to grow our personal brands and tell stories that attracts our ideal clients and brings people to us, so that we can get over the two biggest blockers in terms of LinkedIn has massively changed. And don't worry about your network. It's all about the future.
I think it probably resonated with a lot of people already. We're going to talk about other things that came up, especially with some of the questions that I brought in and that came from some of our students as well, that I think really reflect some of these blocks or misconceptions or really non-starters that you don't feel like you know where to start. And as we're seeing, if anything else comes up, I have my core question, which is obviously part of the class in session, because indeed we're here to learn. And this is a bit timed, if you may. As in, I want to know one thing. Gus, just one thing that you can teach our students and listeners in 1 minute or so about LinkedIn. If you were to teach them one thing, what would that one thing be?
The one thing would be to have conversations, to use it to talk to other people. Now, that one thing, there are a number of kind of, spider legs. So we can say what we have to do is optimize our profile, so it tells the world who we are and what we do and what we're good at. And we kind of, I always say, tell the world what we do, who we do it for, how we do it, and why people should work with us. What do we tell people? What can you achieve by working with us? And then obviously the one big thing from there is to have two-way conversations, connect with the right people, speak to people, etc. Unlike other channels, LinkedIn isn't really a broadcast channel. It's a place where we have two-way conversations. And although we say that about all social media is consumed. So TikTok is consumed, Instagram Reels are consumed. Whereas on LinkedIn, we have conversations. We talk to one another. And that's where the real gold is. So if I can teach anybody anything, just make sure that you engage with your network, you talk to them, send them DMs, comment on their content, like their content, create content that asks questions and garners conversation, etc. So two-way conversation is the key to, in my opinion.
That is so important. And also, I think it goes back into one of the potential blockers that people might have, which is just starting to actually post themselves. And actually, if we go back to what you just shared with us, and I have more questions about the connection piece, but if we just start with the connection piece, then it means that we're not necessarily thinking about what do I have to share as myself. You're thinking, who am I connecting with at first? Who are the first connections that maybe I am intentionally wanting to keep up with and nurture? I'm going to use the word. And then start commenting on their posts. And I generally believe that creativity and ideas will also come from that, by seeing the people that you want to connect with. What do they talk about? What are they passionate about? What stories are they sharing? And how do you feel about those stories? Does anything come back to you as well? I have one question for the busy peeps, because one of the big things that we both share, I'm going to do a little dance just for the video only because I'm happy, is efficiency. Just the efficiency dance. Systems, efficiency. One could argue that everybody could argue that when you look at Gus and you follow him and you connect with him on LinkedIn, it feels like he's always there, ready to help. But also we have to be mindful of our time, and connection can actually feel, I think, very time consuming, especially when we think about it, that idea of talking to people and commenting. So what would you say is the number one thing that we need to remember if we do want to add the connection piece first on LinkedIn, or we want to get better at it, but we also want to do it in a way that it doesn't feel like our whole day has to be spent scrolling on the platform and commenting?
Absolutely. There are people who spend all day on LinkedIn. I am one of them. But then it's my day job. I get paid for this kind of stuff. It's I have clients. It's what they do. It's what I do for them. Now, for most people who have a proper job, you don't want to spend all day on social media. So the idea of LinkedIn is that you have to be efficient. Now, way to be efficient is that you curate the perfect audience, so you get the people that you want to speak to, so you create a positive echo chamber, and then literally you spend 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, just scrolling, just engaging with others. Even if you don't create your own content, it's very easy to curate an audience and then engage with that audience. Comment on their content, like their content, engage with them, maybe send them a DM, just like, hey, how are you? That kind of stuff. Um, but it's the goal, and because the gold is in the engagement, you don't have to spend all day doing that. That's the thing. You don't have to kind of have fancy. Some of my best content takes me all of 10 seconds to write. I think of something and then I write it down on LinkedIn and I post it, and it's like, it's so silly and inane, but people love it, and etc. When I spend hours on content, it dies. It's just like nobody sees it, and it's like, oh man, it's really cool. So, it's a great blog post. People don't have time. People are scrolling, and the gold is in the engagement. So what I would say is to be efficient, maybe spend a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes in the evening, just engaging with others. Just, if you haven't got time to create your own content and all that kind of stuff.
There's one piece in that is even more gold, all the gold, just saying, just all the gold,
Mm.
which I would do another dance for, but I don't know how many dances I can do consecutively before we start feeling like there's something wrong.
Sure.
But mentally, I'm dancing at the idea of the curation piece, because I think that's actually something that people might hear it and you might think about it, but you don't really let it like sink in.
Mm.
LinkedIn is one of the few places where actually I think the curation of your own network is a lot stronger, because let's be honest, obviously people follow you on any other platform doesn't mean you have to follow them back, but still they can enter into your world, whether you like it or not, which means they can also engage with you. And it might be something that at first you don't think makes a difference in the way that then you show up on the platform, but actually LinkedIn is the only place where, yes, people can follow you now, which is a bit different, but obviously when they connect with you for real, that's an easy and powerful gateway into like a one-to-one conversation if you know how to do it well. So I think that curation piece is something that maybe we don't think about enough. And actually like the idea of housekeeping with that as well, which I think is really, really important. And it kind of leads me to another point just on the connection piece as well, which is, do you have a process when it comes to going from public to private, I'm going to call it? And that's the only other piece on the connecting element in the networking, because the magic for me really happens when I get somebody in the DMs and I'm like, hi, I promise I'm going to be nice. Yeah. And I think if we think it might be easy, but for so many of us, it's hard to start the conversation without people being like, oh my God, it's another random spam bot that was going to go straight into my blocking system. So I don't know if you have any tips for that, because I think it's very relevant for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a lot of LinkedIn trainers will kind of suggest that you should have massive audiences. And there's no point having a massive audience if they're not interested, they're not engaged, or they're not your ideal client avatar or ideal client persona, whatever you call it. So audience curation is one thing. And it's better to have a smaller audience that's interested rather than a large audience that's not. And then particularly when it comes to kind of obviously, it's about having the right audience and then creating content that that audience wants to read. Now, when it comes into the DMs, it's always about the non-selling. And we know this, like as marketers, we know, look, we have to sell because we have to make money. But at the same time, if we went in with a cold pitch, people aren't interested. So what I usually do is, if people engage with my content enough, or if they comment on my content where they say, oh, I like this content, or I agree with this, etc., I will just take it offline and just say kind of, oh, sorry, not offline, take it into DMs and just say, well, thanks for your comment, or thanks for engaging today, or would you like to elaborate on this, etc. What I find is that as humans, we love talking about ourselves. So one of the things is to engage people in a conversation is to ask about them. The biggest problem is that what people do is they talk about themselves. hey, thanks for commenting. Just so you know, I do LinkedIn training and I'm a marketing strategist, etc. People switch off. They don't care because it's like, yeah, I've already seen your profile. I don't, if I need you, I'll call you. Whereas if you ask about them, like, oh, so what are you up to nowadays? How are things, or how's business, or can you just elaborate on your headline or something like that, etc. People love talking about themselves, and that engages in a conversation, which then demonstrates a bit of the know, like, trust. They get to know you, they get to like you, and hopefully over time they get to trust you because you're having those conversations.
Notes on that. First of all, yes. Secondly, if you think about what I also kind of not just did, but what I did at the beginning, where obviously been talking to Gus for a while, I even met you in real life, which is not something that you can say for most people that you connect with, especially on this podcast, because all over the world. And obviously, I noticed something. I noticed the orange as much as our yellow. So I was genuinely interested in knowing that. And I think that's the element of going back to you trying to connect with people and in your feed.
Yeah.
You will learn and pick up things. And sometimes for me, if I know that I want to connect with somebody and it's been a while and I see that they're celebrating something or they've done something, that's actually a good time for me to ask them about that, or to, to let them know that I saw that or what I took out from that. It is an element of actually thinking about these as relationship building, which you talked about within All Like and Trust. So I really love that you mentioned that. And it's not the easiest if it doesn't come natural. And even to me, it doesn't come natural by default. But I've learned it with the podcast and in general to make it more part of the process of me connecting with people. And I've seen personally that really has been paying off a lot. I don't know if it makes sense to you or something that you also do, like a little investigator hat on, and trying to learn more about people before I reach out, even if I don't know really what we're going to get out of it. But if I know there's a potential to do anything together, I still want to reach out in a way that is mindful and that is meaningful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the thing is, we live in an ironic world where we want to make money, but we don't want to buy from anybody else, like without us getting to know them. So all our suppliers, all our clients, everybody we work with are people that we do get to know, like, and trust. And so it's exactly what you said. It's basically investigating people, learning about people, learning what makes them tick. You look at their content, you look at their headline, you read their about section, you click on their company page, you visit their website, you learn about people so that when they talk about themselves, you can repeat something back to them, which shows that you've done your research, which also shows that you're actually interested rather than just trying to get to a pitch at the end, kind of thing. And I think that's the thing. When you've done your due diligence and you've done your research on somebody, it genuinely shows that actually you're just interested in that person. You just actually genuinely want a conversation, and you can't fake that. There's no way of faking that. And like, regardless of what any AI specialist tells you, you can't do it with AI. You can't fake being a good person and asking people questions about them and actually genuinely being interested in somebody else.
Which leads me to a great point, which is making marketing more human means being a goddamn decent human being. Please and thank you. Literally, like if you were to summarize one of our messages, that will probably be it. Just if you are more human and you treat these relationship building as a human, it will be a lot easier because you don't have to force it. And I love what you mentioned within that as well, because I think it's so important. And actually makes me shift slightly into something that I wanted to ask you anyway, but I'm really going to lead with the questions of our audience because there's already students are really on it today. Little rebels are giving us the goodness. So first of all, thank you, rebels. I'm going to do a little pulse check if you're here live. And if you're listening, just think about the answer for yourself. If you're live, you can give us hearts. If you don't post a lot of content or don't post content at all on LinkedIn, or there's a little guy with glasses in the reactions who I'm obsessed with, if you are more active and you're posting more on LinkedIn. So let's see, we got some hearts. Let's see if we got guy with glasses is my favorite, by the way. We've got quite a few guy with glasses and just a couple of hearts as well. So we have quite a few active people, but I think it's still good to come back to even the basics of just kind of starting out. So I'm actually going to go with Faisal's question first, which almost sets the tone as well. Before we get into kind of posting content and showing up on LinkedIn, is LinkedIn good for all type of brands in any industries, or does any specific industry, which you operate that is better than others? I think this will help us really kind of go into the next stage as well.
On LinkedIn, I believe it was earlier this week, LinkedIn have announced that they have 1 billion members on LinkedIn. There are 1 billion people that have a LinkedIn account. You're bound to find somebody that does what you do, or you're bound to find like an ideal client or somebody that you want to work with. Whereas previously, LinkedIn used to be very much a B2B platform. It's like, let's be accountants and HR and lawyers and stuff. Nowadays, it's like, we'll just sell anything. We'll sell fish or Coca-Cola or whatever. It's like you can sell anything to anyone. And I think the point is that it's not necessarily about, you don't always have to find the end client. Sometimes it's about finding that referral network that does other things for you. So it's what I call octopus tentacles. You connect with somebody and then they engage with your content, and then their network sees your content. So what you're doing is you're sending out the tentacles and bringing people back, and you're sucking them in. And that's the thing. And I think that works in any industry. So connecting to the right people is very important, but also creating content that those people would want to read, that obviously tells people about you, no matter what you do, whether it's B2B, B2C. Like, I know lots of marketers now call, H to H, human to human. Yeah, I get that. However, the point is, any business can thrive on LinkedIn. To give you an example, there are 330 goat herders on LinkedIn. Don't ask me how I know that. That's just but that, I mean, if goat herders can be, and there's sheep dippers as well, and don't ask me what they are. We'll Google it. But there's generally people in almost any sector, any business that you can think of. What you have to do is find them and engage with them, create content that they want to read. If you're not creating content, go and speak to them and make sure that you stay in their face so that they come back to you, basically. So that's it's for everybody. That's the main.
First of all, now you are getting a little happy dance, everybody. And again, if you're not watching on YouTube, then you just can imagine this is a different dance. The reason why I love that, and just to add one more piece of like my own advice to the answer to the question, is that you talked about the octopus. And I think it's a great image actually of standing out each platform. And in this case, LinkedIn works for you. For some of us, there are some platforms that I genuinely believe are talking to specific people within our ecosystem that might not be the end client. And I love that you mentioned that, because we don't talk about that enough. And just because maybe, let's say a higher percent end client might not be on LinkedIn, or on LinkedIn as your end client. Maybe your clients are parents, but that person is not there as a parent, is there as a professional. One, it doesn't mean that they will need your support as a parent. But two, as you mentioned, it's good to kind of ask ourselves, who are the main people that I can reach out on LinkedIn? Are the potential partners? Are the potential investors? As you say, is a potential network amplifier, or is my end client? And I think that, as you say, will really shape then the way that you show up. So thank you for mentioning that. And that's also part of my advice linked to that. Just go back and ask yourself, who am I going to reach on LinkedIn? And I think we don't ask ourselves that enough, and, kind of make sure that we know that first. And there's another question. You talked about content, and we're diving deep into that. I know that live, especially, we have quite a few people that already are active, but I love this question from our lovely member, Andrea. Hello. One of our students from the community. I'd love to know your tips for beginners, and assuming the profile is optimized and the audience is curated. So that's what we're looking at. How would you develop content based on the marketing funnel on LinkedIn? I think there's so many ways that we can go about it. What does come into your mind straight away with this question?
So I have what I call the 70-30 split. It's a long story. I call it the Daniel Craig content strategy. I've got images that go with it. It's a post on LinkedIn. Basically, 70% of my content. I don't know if you've seen Daniel Craig in the Belvedere advert, the vodka, and he's dancing. There's like minutes of him dancing. Basically, 70% of my content is like Daniel Craig dancing, right? 30% of my content is Daniel Craig, like James Bond, the serious guy, the suit, the like looking serious, etc. When it comes to creating content, don't forget, like, the personality content is where you're going to get engagement and get reach, etc. The business content is we're going to tell people what you do for a living. So now, for me, it's a very arbitrary figure. Like I said, it's 70-30. So 70% of my content is very personable. Like, for example, I met Fab at a networking event, or I went networking, or I'm on a podcast, or, I bought some orange trainers, or I'm eating orange chocolate, that kind of stuff. That's 70% of my content. 30% of my content is I do marketing. I do marketing strategy. I do LinkedIn training. This is what I do for a living. This is how you can give me some money. Please give me some money. That's 30% of my content. Now, my advice is, particularly for beginners, is start telling a story about who you are. It's that kind of because we can go to Google, and you can go to Google now and just type in social media manager, and there's like 5 million pages, and I'm not on page number 1. but you will choose me because you like orange chocolate, or you like orange trainers, or you like the networking event that I go to, or you like Fab and she said something nice about me, or something like that. That's what you want to do. You want to, your content should be to your clients, but telling the world what makes you different from everybody else that does what you do. But don't forget, in between that, you still have to tell people, this is what I do, please give me some money. So it's the, for me, it's a split basically. So if you're going to do 3 posts a week, for example, 2 of them could be about your week, and then one of them specifically as a sales post, like, this is what I do for a living. The sales post will never do as well as the other posts, but that's okay because the engagement rolls over. You want people to get the big engagement pieces, so when you do post content about what you do for a living, they roll over and they kind of see that, and it becomes a reinforcement. It's like, oh, he does marketing, but he also eats orange chocolate. I like orange chocolate, I should give him some money, that kind of stuff.
The first thing that when you mentioned this was actually you redoing that ad at some point whenever budgets allow it, or you just have the capacity. That would be brilliant. I would honestly make sure that everybody in the world sees that, because that would be exceptional.
Yeah.
If you don't know the Daniel Craig ad, go and check it out. You know what I'm talking about. One question that I would have as a follow-up question myself, and then maybe diving a bit deeper into the funnel piece, I'm going to add a question to that too. But the first question I have is, when it comes to the more relatable content, that's something that I know some people might be thinking or might want to ask themselves is, do you actually have some value for the audience that is specific to something they can take away? Or is it, with the idea of add value every single time you post? Or some of it is just genuinely you sharing that you bought some orange trainers and that is awesome. I think that's one of the things a lot of people think about when it comes to creating the content that they do.
Yeah, so I call it the Adrian Mole strategy. So obviously you're not old enough to remember Adrian Mole, but 13 and 3/4, it was a diary, it was a book when we were kids and stuff. Basically, Adrian Mole used to journal his life, and it was a diary, and we read his diary. It was a children's book. LinkedIn is very much the same. I believe it's like a journaling piece. Like, let's journal our week. Monday I did this, Tuesday I did this, Wednesday I did this. What it does is, although it may seem very personal, it actually tells your audience what makes you tick and what you get up to and what your day to day. If you spend all day every day saying, I'm working, I'm a social media, today I'm on Facebook, today I'm on Instagram, today I'm on TikTok, nobody cares. It's like, yeah, that's your job, kind of thing. When you talk about, well, I bought some orange trainers, or I went networking, or I met Fab, or I did a live podcast and all that kind of stuff, it's that bit where people learn, oh, he does that as well, and he likes this, or he does this. And then what happens is it's the reinforcement. So when people start thinking, like you said, when you think of orange, you think of Gus. Hopefully when you think of LinkedIn, you also think of Gus. But generally, it's the association of things. And I think, sometimes I spoke to somebody today who was a chartered financial planner, and she says that she does like cold water swimming. And I said, that's great. To be honest, I don't know any chartered financial planners, but now I know a chartered financial planner that does lake swimming, like cold water swimming. And it's the association, the reinforcement. So it have to be too personal, but they just have to give people an insight into your life, just so that, because again, it's part of the funnel. People buy from people. Otherwise, they can just go to Google and search for anybody they want, basically. So, and you want to stop people going to Google, so they come to you first and they remember you because of other things.
That is so important. I see the only one challenge that some people might have, and I wanted to quickly explore that scenario because it's a complementary scenario but slightly different, where either you are mainly because you're part of a team or because you have a client to actually either be on LinkedIn as a company page, or be on LinkedIn and handle the LinkedIn of somebody else within your team or one of your clients, or help them do that. Do you think there's any difference when it comes to that? Like, there's anything that we need to think about instead, or does the same rule apply? I think if we put ourselves in those shoes, it can be harder to think about what am I going to be talking about if I'm not talking about it as myself. So what would you say somebody has to build that type of brand, but for somebody else or for an entity? Is it possible? Is it not? What are some of your thoughts?
It's, as a social media manager, I would say, it's very easy for me to talk like somebody else, etc. But there's a certain thing. Now, to give you a slightly longer answer here. In my LinkedIn headline, it says I'm the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer. And then at the end, it says, according to my mum. Now, the reason I do that, A, it's a joke, but also it's because people read that, think, oh, this guy's funny, so he will write good content for us. If you're a really professional, boring kind of like, you don't, if that's the kind of business that you are, you're not going to come to me. And I repel those companies because I tell jokes and I have silly, personable content and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to writing as somebody else, yes, you have to learn what, you have to learn what makes them tick, what their tone of voice is, how do they swear, do they use particular words, etc. I used to have a client that said, I use the word awesome all the time. And so do I. So I was like, this is great, because I could just copy my content and give it to you. So, and it's very difficult to write as somebody else. But then the whole point of LinkedIn is that if you are sharing a brand story, so if it's all developing into either the brand or the company brand, then you have a persona. You have to create a persona for yourself, as in like your own persona. Obviously, not a fake one. You have to be authentic, but it has to be you, and and that would be easily shareable. Like, got somebody to write as me, they would always use the word awesome. They would always talk about orange stuff. They'd always tell jokes, all that kind of stuff. It'd be pretty easy for somebody to do that. And I think that's the thing. It's, if you are always yourself, it's very easy for somebody else to pick that up, kind of thing. So as soon as you try to be somebody else on LinkedIn, that's where it fails. So it's very easy to be yourself. It's very easy to say, oh, and if you're going to write to somebody else, just be them, because hopefully that person and themselves. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but it's a lot easier than trying to pretend, like, be fake, if you know what I mean, or like create a persona for somebody else.
What I love within that is that if we take it as an action step as well for anybody who might be struggling with this, is then go back actually to breaking down what is the persona that I'm going to say a brand, whether it's a personal brand that is somebody else or like a brand wants to be on LinkedIn. And it might be that it's the same persona that you have built all over your marketing. It might be that you actually have to ask yourself, what am I sharing about my work or my experiences that makes me unique? So there is actually in that, there's an element of research and or defining that for ourselves. And I think it kind of at least gives us a place to start, because that's when it can get daunting, as you say, because it can be easy to say, just be yourself or just, embody that person. But we can actually do the research. It just takes an extra step. And I think it's important that we remember that at the end of the day, the investigative piece that I always talk about, being curious as a marketer, I think is such a great skill that we don't talk about enough. And sometimes it's about ourselves, sometimes it's about others as well. And I have one more question that is a follow-up that actually Andrea asked earlier in the community, but I picked it up. And I love this question. And it was more about maybe defining things that you can talk about, content pillar in the context of LinkedIn. I'm going to go with this and maybe have two elements of it. So I'd love to know your method of defining content pillars in the context of LinkedIn and how to stay authentic and inspired. That is going to be the two folds. We're going to start with, would you suggest, or do you have other pillars or topics that you go back to, or you basically work on that 70-30 kind of split, and that's kind of how you define what content you're going to post? That's my first question.
So to answer that question, so particularly even in the 70-30 split, there are content pillars. So for example, every 2 weeks I host a networking event. So I know at least once I'm going to post about that. I'm running a LinkedIn conference. So at least once I've got to post about that. And these content pillars change over the years, like over the months, because obviously when the LinkedIn conference is done, I'm not going to post about it. It's not a content pillar anymore until the next one, obviously. So you have these kind of content pillars that are interchangeable, but there are some content pillars which will just remain forever, like recommendations, testimonials, the different services that you offer, the people that you speak to, the kind of clients you want to work with, etc. Those kind of content pillars will just be the same forever. But you should have regular content pillars that change depending on the season or depending on what you're doing and depending on what you're up to, because it obviously keeps you, not only does it keep your content fresh, it reminds people of the different kind of like the breadth of information that you can provide to them in terms of what you do. So I mean, to define content pillars is never easy. It's different for everybody, but ultimately I would, me personally, so 3 posts a week, 2 posts are quite personable, but they're about things that I do. So networking or Orange Trainers or Orange Juggler or whatever, speaking to Fab, all that, speaking gigs and all that, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. They are personable content pillars. But one of my content pillars every week is I must talk about a service that I offer, whether it's marketing strategies, whether it's LinkedIn training, whether it's corporate team training, whatever it is. So I do that on a regular basis. So you have to define them, but don't be afraid to kind of mix them and change them up, because ultimately the audience always changes as well. And not 100% of your audience will see 100% of your content. So it's always good to mix it up on a regular basis.
That's actually a great reminder as well, even on places like LinkedIn. I think sometimes we forget that we talked about association and repetition quite a lot today. So I think it goes back to that point when it comes to your content. And as you say, it kind of creates that balance. And even your services then and what you do gets associated with you, which I think is really important. So the second piece, just to tail this off, and I'll see if there's any other questions as well from our lovely students in Rebels Live, is about this staying authentic and inspired. I am almost on the other end of the spectrum, so I really have to think about giving people suggestions because I always have ideas. It's good, but it's also bad. I always have ideas of content that I can talk about because I constantly ask myself questions. So that will be my practical tip on my side. What have I learned today? What have I done this week? And within that, then I keep track, again, system queen. I know that if you know the school, you will know I'm a systems queen. And I keep track of all of these ideas, and then I will go through the process of editing and refining them to turn them into actual posts. But if it's there, I make sure that I can capture it as quickly as I can. So for me, it's hard to put myself into the shoes of somebody that is stuck and doesn't know what to share because I've been ingrained into the system. But what would you say for somebody who's not me, basically, who actually does struggle with that idea of inspiration because they're still trying to define some of the pillars or some of the things they can get back to?
Forget pillars, particularly when you want to be authentic and inspired. Forget the pillars. What you want to do is think that everything is content. If you are listening to this live podcast, this is content. Go write about it and say, oh, I did this today, kind of thing. You go and have dinner later and you spill coffee on the floor or whatever. Go write about it. That's a post, and it's all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't have to be, wasn't there, oh, I dropped coffee and it taught me that actually I should go get a marketing degree or whatever. It doesn't make any sense, right? So sometimes you just want to tell stories because they are stories. And what it is, it gives people an insight into your life. Everything is content. That's the first thing. But the second thing is we have at our fingertips a whole host of resources such as Google, Answer the Public, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all this other kind of stuff. What I like to do is, and particularly for clients, I go to Google and I just type in a question. Like, for example, if I have a legal client, I'll just type in, why do I need a lawyer? And then all of a sudden you've got loads of content that says this is why you need a lawyer, etc. At the bottom of page 1, it will say, people who ask this also ask this question. And there are 8 other questions. So I can answer all 8 of those questions. And all of a sudden I've got 8 pieces of content. And if I'm posting 3 times a week, that's like 2 weeks of content, right? More or less. Now, then we have websites like answerthepublic.com. You go to Answer the Public, you literally just type in something. So I would go in there and just type in LinkedIn, and then it will give me a million questions. Why do I need LinkedIn? How do I use LinkedIn? Who is LinkedIn? Who works on LinkedIn? Or whatever it may be. And it's like a million questions. Then I go and answer those questions. Now, admittedly, they are work-related questions. So that would be my work-related content pillar. I would come back to everything in my day is my authentic and inspired content pillar in terms of, I'm going to tell people that I'm on this podcast, or I'm going to tell people that I went networking. I'm going to tell people that I just had a cup of tea, or I'm going to tell people that my phone battery died, or, whatever. And it's just these, not that I'm going to do that. That would be nonsensical, but it's the day-to-day, just start thinking of, can I write something related to this? Will people be interested in this? And 99 times out of 100, yes, people will be interested in what you do because it intersperses the work stuff. I can talk all day, every day about LinkedIn. Most people will, and they're just like, yeah, okay, I get it. You're a LinkedIn trainer. I get it. But when I say, oh, I do this and I do that, and I've got networking and etc., and people are like, oh, right, that's cool. Like, that's what makes him tick. So just, I think everything around you can be content, and there will come a time where you just think, actually, that's an abundance of content. Now I've got much. I need to rein it in. So yeah, just think everything around you is content.
That is literally one of the most powerful yet simple pieces of advice. When you see it that way, and I love the example that you brought as well from like just a cup of coffee. It doesn't mean that you talk about why you should go and change your marketing strategy just because of. And I think that can be one of the challenges that we have as well that we don't talk about enough, is actually understanding that sometimes the value that people want to get is getting to understand you and to know you and to see how you overcome other challenges that are not necessarily work related or whatever that might be, instead of trying to almost force it in, which you mentioned a bit, into a topic that doesn't fit in. I have one more tip on this note, and then I'm going to have one more question from the audience, which is If you then are working with a client, to be like us, or you're doing this on the behalf of somebody else, these questions, like for example, the Google questions that you can get from obviously searching, these are great questions that either you can ask yourself on their behalf, or this can be a process where every month, that's what I would do with our clients. I actually ask them some questions, and then most of our clients, because we don't have a lot on the agency side because the school takes enough time, many clients, but still, all of them, I say, just do me a voice note. Respond how you would with a voice note, answering each question. And then this is invaluable because it helps us build up on their tone of voice, what they would actually say, and it kind of gives us that insights. Just wanted to mention that as a note. If you're doing something as somebody else, there are millions of things you can do that works really well for us. So something that maybe you want to explore. Final question before we go into quick fire is once again from Andreas on Fire. I'm obsessed with this. Thank you. Yes, I'm curious to know, how would you recommend others prevent from becoming irrelevant if you post lots of everyday stuff? Okay, so it's basically about balance, right? Balance in posting.
Yeah. Now, what I recommend to my clients, particularly those that are beginners or particularly those that don't post too much content, I recommend that once a week. So, for example, every Friday, write a post about your week. Monday, I did this. Tuesday, I did this. Wednesday, I did this, etc. Now, I don't know, live on an island. Like not England, I mean, like a much smaller island. If you live on an island, it's likely that your week is going to be different every week, right? So no matter who you are or where you are, etc., your week is always going to be different. One week you're going to, and I know I keep talking about this, but it's the content pillars that I'm thinking of. One week you might do networking. The following week you might go shopping. The following week you'll make a lasagna or whatever, etc. And there's always different things that we can post. And you talk about, but interspersed. So for example, Monday I went networking. Tuesday I met with a client. Wednesday I went for a coffee. Thursday, I received a lovely testimonial. Friday, we're all going to have pizza in the office, whatever it may be. And then the next week, it'll be something completely different. So, but the way to stop it being the way to keep it fresh and make sure that your audience are interested in that is because A, your week is different every week, but also you're also sharing the work stuff. The work, like, oh, well, this is a client testimonial I received. Here's a case study, or here's what I do, or here's a different service that I offer, and all that kind of stuff. So it's making sure that you remind your audience that, well, this is what I do for a living and this is how I make money. But then it's the weekly post that says, but this is what makes me tick. This is, who I am and all that kind of stuff. And in theory, hopefully it should be kind of different every week. It's very, apart from all of that, the old idea is to grow a band of brand followers, ambassadors, people that talk about you. So for example, Fab may never give me any money, but she will talk to other people about me that other people might give me money. Like she'll say, oh, you need a LinkedIn trainer, you should speak to Gus, that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's about, so I would say Fab is a brand ambassador of mine. I'm a brand ambassador of Fab's, and that's that's where the kind of the networks grow. So it's never going to become stale because people either love you or they don't. And if they don't, then fine, don't worry, we'll find. There's a billion people on LinkedIn. We'll find somebody that does, right? So it's fine.
Somebody that as interested in sheep as you are. That's still tick for me. That's tick.
That's not neither. I'm not interested in sheep or goats. Just to clarify for the live podcast.
I'm obsessed. Gus, thank you so much. First of all, can we give some hearts if we're here live for Gus before we get into quick fire? Just there we go. So we got lots of hearts from all the lovely students and rebels that joined us live. And now it's quick fire time, just to put even more pressure on us because it wouldn't be a podcast app without a quick fire. Are we ready?
I was born ready.
Spotify playlist or podcast?
Spotify playlist.
Nice. Is there a go-to Spotify playlist before I get to the next?
Yeah, I have my Spotify playlists like split into rock music, chill out music, dance music, and I've got one playlist of all the music I would have if I walked onto a big stage. So, and I love, so yeah, so.
Because I have that too.
Yeah, I know, we have to have it, right? Yeah, so we're so self-involved.
Power songs.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So my walk-on music makes me wake up and think, yeah, I'm gonna seize the day. That's the main thing. So.
I'm obsessed. That's actually a great tip. The little power songs, the kind of walk on stage songs.
Yeah.
Voice notes or texts?
First time we meet, texts. After that, voice notes, of course.
Using people in. I love that. Carousels or reels?
Carousels.
TikTok or YouTube?
YouTube.
Love that.
Yeah.
And finally, the most important question, memes or GIFs?
Memes. Definitely memes. They can say so much more. Yeah, absolutely.
Meme can say 1,000 words, unless it's a personalized GIF, though.
Yeah. Oh, wow,
that might come into anybody's DMs if you're not careful with me. Just like a GIF of me.
Yeah.
Gus, thank you so much again. Before I let you remind people where they can find out more about you, I want to ask you one final question. If you were to choose one party trick, what would that be? What would be your ultimate party trick? Do you have one?
Wow, party trick. The only thing I can think of, and it's because I do this with my son. So I've got a young son, he's 6 years old. So I do card tricks, but they're not very good card tricks. They're absolutely terrible card tricks. But for 6-year-olds, they're the best. Like I do things like I'll put like coins in my hand and say, "Oh, you got something in your ear," and and he's like, "Wow, this is amazing!" And obviously, it's a so. But yeah, my party trick, as long as it's a kids' party, is I can do really terrible card tricks. That's the thing I can do.
I love that. So we got the caveat of kids' parties. That's the best.
It has
party
to,
trick.
yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Adults will not be impressed. So,
Gus, thank you so much. You're getting some love in the chat as well. We're getting some waterfalls of love everywhere, hearts.
Thank you so much.
Where can people find out more about you if they're ready to kick off their LinkedIn as well?
So you can find me on LinkedIn as obviously Gus Bandel, but also if you Google mguru.uk, that's my hashtag, that's my suffix, that's my handle, mguru.uk. Go and Google that, and I'm on the first 10 pages. You'll see me. You'll see my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter, my BeReal, my Clubhouse, my Talk, my Pinterest, my Discord, my Parler. I'm on 50,000 different channels, and then you'll find my website, and you'll find kind of my inside leg measurement and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just everything's on Google. mguru UK.
All the good things that we need.
Yeah, exactly. But I do my best work on LinkedIn. Just to be clear.
I love that. Gus, thank you so much again. I hope that you found the energy and inspiration that you need to show up on LinkedIn as your best selves, as always. And just a reminder for me before we leave, be kind to yourself and others. And remember that true marketing speaks to hearts, not just to minds. And until next time, team, class is dismissed.